I don't usually stay late at the shop, but that evening the rain came down so hard the world outside blurred into static. The smell of wet asphalt drifted through the cracked window, mixing with the sharp scent of motor oil and steel. I wiped my hands on a rag, half listening to the hum of the fluorescent lights. That's when she walked in, or maybe drifted in, like she didn't belong to the same noise and grime as the rest of us. She stood at the entrance, umbrella half collapsed, water dripping off the edges of her coat. Mid-40s, maybe. Confident posture, though her eyes moved with the kind of tired focus you see in people who've already lived too many versions of themselves. Sorry, you're still open? Her voice carried that soft authority people don't fake, like she didn't need to ask permission to exist in any room she entered. I nodded, trying to look busy. Yeah, what's wrong with it? She lifted a hand toward the counter, where she'd placed her keys. My car. Engine light's been blinking for a week. I thought I could ignore it, but she glanced toward the rain. It's not really a night for pretending, is it? That line stuck with me. Not a night for pretending. I found her car outside, an old silver sedan, clean but not new, with the kind of care that says, this still matters. She followed me under the half-lit awning, hands in her pockets. Her perfume mixed with the smell of rain, faint citrus, something deliberate but not sweet. You can wait inside, I said. I'd rather stay, she replied, almost like she needed the noise of the rain to cover her silence. So she watched. I worked. Neither of us said much. Every so often, I'd feel her eyes on my hands. Not in that way that makes you self-conscious, but curious, maybe respectful. The kind of look that made the air between us hum just enough to notice. After a while, I realized I was explaining more than usual. What I was checking, how certain parts wore out over time, how people ignored small sounds until they became big problems. She listened like each word meant something larger. You talk about cars like they have feelings, she said, half smiling. I shrugged. Some do. Some just stop trying. She gave me this look, like she understood what I wasn't saying. Like she'd known what it felt like to stop trying, too. We didn't talk about it. We didn't need to. When the rain eased, she stepped closer to the edge of the awning. Her hair, damp and dark, caught the faint orange of the streetlight. She reached into her coat pocket and handed me a folded napkin with her number written in neat, deliberate handwriting. Only if you think the car needs another look, she said. I should have said something casual, something normal. Instead, I just nodded, heart beating louder than it had any right to. She turned to leave, pausing at the door like she'd forgotten something. Her eyes met mine for half a second, long enough for me to forget what I was holding, long enough for the sound of rain to disappear. Later, when the shop went quiet again, one of the guys leaned on the counter and smirked. She's just playing, he said. Maybe she was. But when I looked down at that napkin, her handwriting, her silence, the way her words lingered like the smell of rain, I just muttered back, mostly to myself, then let me play along with love. And somehow, it didn't feel like a game at all. She came back the next Thursday, said the engine still made a sound, somewhere between a sigh and a complaint. I knew it didn't. I'd fixed everything, but I didn't say that. The rain had stopped this time. Sunlight slid through the open garage door, dust drifting in its path like lazy snow. I was under another car when her voice came, low, careful, the kind that waits for permission before breaking a quiet room. Do you ever feel like things stop working just so you'll pay attention to them? Her tone wasn't teasing. I rolled out from under the car, wiping my hands again. Always wiping, like it gave me time to think. Depends. Machines, people, they both do that sometimes. She smiled, but not really. More like the idea of smiling passed through her before it landed. I checked her car again, pretending to be busy. She didn't hover this time. She leaned against the counter, fingers tracing a slow pattern in the thin layer of dust. Her nails were clean, short, no polish. Her hands didn't match her face. They told stories of someone who'd done her share of real work, the kind that didn't show in photographs. How's your week been? I asked, knowing it was a small question for someone like her. She exhaled through her nose, quiet. Busy, tiring, pretending to care about things that don't matter, mostly. That made me look up. Her eyes were on the ground, not me. A faint line formed between her brows like she regretted saying it out loud. I wanted to ask who or what she meant, but something in her posture warned me off. The slight tightening of her jaw, the way she crossed her arms loosely, as if holding herself together. So instead, I said, yeah, some days, that's the hardest part, pretending. She looked at me then, really looked. For a moment, she wasn't older, wiser, unreachable, just human. And in that pause, everything else in the shop, the hum of lights, the faint radio static, the smell of grease, went quiet. You shouldn't agree so easily, she said finally, a hint of warmth in her tone, maybe even challenge. Maybe I just understand too easily. Her laugh came small and unguarded, soft enough to make my chest ache. It wasn't flirtation, not exactly. More like a moment that slipped out before she could stop it. I leaned on the counter beside her, keeping a respectful distance but close enough to feel her presence. The warmth of it, like standing near a lamp in a cold room. You look tired, I said quietly. Do I? She asked, though she didn't sound surprised. Her fingers brushed beneath one eye, as if checking. I suppose I am. There was something about the way she said that, not like a complaint, but a confession. For a long second, neither of us moved. Then she straightened, pulling her coat tighter. Anyway, she said, softer now. Thank you for checking again. I nodded, though she hadn't needed to come at all. When she turned to leave, the edge of her sleeve brushed my arm. Barely a touch, maybe not even that. But it left something behind, something that lingered like static. She didn't look back as she stepped into the light. I did. And in that moment, the air between us felt charged, not with what was said, but everything that wasn't. It was a Friday night when she called, said her car wouldn't start again. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because part of me already knew she'd find a reason. It's probably the battery, I said. I know, but it's dark, and I'm somewhere off 8th, near the bookstore. That hesitation in her voice, small, deliberate, felt like a door half open. I found her parked beneath a flickering streetlight. The city around us hummed low with drizzle and the sound of distant tires on wet pavement. She stood outside the car, arms folded, rain freckling her coat. You came, she said, like she hadn't been sure I would. You asked, I replied. The silence after that wasn't uncomfortable. It just was. I got to work, crouched near the hood, flashlight in my mouth. She stood close enough that I could feel her warmth when the wind passed. The rain picked up, soft but insistent, and soon her hair clung to her cheeks. You should wait inside, I told her. Then you'll just get soaked alone, she said, half smiling. Doesn't seem fair. There was no logic in arguing with that. When I finished, she offered to buy me dinner. Her way of saying thank you, I guess. I wanted to refuse, but the word sure came out before I could stop it. We found a small diner nearby, the kind that still used paper menus and smelled like burnt coffee. She ordered tea. I stuck with water. The rain outside softened to a whisper, pressing its rhythm against the window. Do you ever wonder, she said suddenly, if people come into your life just to remind you of what you've stopped feeling? Her words hit like static in the air. Yeah, I said quietly. And then they leave before you understand why. That made her look at me. Really look. Something passed between us then, not quite an invitation, not quite a warning. The server brought our food, and for a while, neither of us spoke. She stirred her tea without drinking it. I watched her fingers move, slow and precise, as if she was thinking of something she couldn't say aloud. Then her phone buzzed. A name flashed across the screen. Mark. She flipped it face down without answering. You should, I started. No, she said. Not tonight. Her tone was firm, but the tremor beneath it betrayed her. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't need to. The lights above us flickered, briefly dimming the room to amber. She looked tired again, but softer this time, like she'd dropped something heavy she didn't mean to carry. When we stood to leave, she hesitated near the door, brushing her sleeve lightly against mine. The smallest movement, deliberate or accidental, I couldn't tell. Outside, rain shimmered under the streetlights. She turned to say something, then stopped. Her lips parted, a breath caught between us. Good night, she whispered instead, and stepped away. I stood there for a while, watching her walk to her car, headlights washing her in pale gold. My hands were still wet from the rain, or maybe from everything I hadn't said. And just before she closed her door, she looked back once, that half-second glance that said something almost happened here. Something that shouldn't have. Something I wasn't ready to stop. She stopped coming by for 2 weeks. At first, I told myself it didn't matter, that people get busy, that maybe the car was fine this time. But the longer the silence stretched, the more it felt like a missing sound I couldn't unhear. Then, one late evening, I saw her again. Not in the shop this time, but across the street, outside the small cafe that stayed open past 10. She was sitting alone, a half-empty cup in front of her, watching the window like she was waiting for something that wouldn't happen. I almost kept walking. Almost. But when she looked up and our eyes met through the glass, she didn't look surprised, just tired of pretending she didn't want to be seen. Inside, the cafe smelled of cinnamon and rain-damp clothes. The lights were low, soft enough to make everything feel half-dreamed. She gave a small, uncertain smile when I sat across from her. "You look different without grease on your hands," she said. "You look the same," I replied. "Like you're thinking about leaving." She blinked at that, then laughed, quietly, the kind of laugh people use when they're trying not to cry. "I shouldn't be here," she said finally. "Then why are you?" Her eyes dropped to her cup. "Because I keep telling myself it's nothing. Just friendly. But it doesn't feel that way anymore." The words hung there, fragile and raw. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I just watched her fingers tremble slightly as she set the cup down. She went on, softer now. "You're too young to understand what it means to want something you shouldn't. At my age, it's not romantic, it's reckless." Her voice broke slightly on the last word. I didn't interrupt. I couldn't. "Finally," I said, "then why does it feel honest?" She looked at me, and something in her expression shifted, the kind of look people get when they realize they've been caught feeling. "This," she gestured between us. "Whatever this is, it can't lead anywhere good." "I know. Then why do you keep looking at me like that?" I swallowed hard, because she was right, and because I didn't have an answer that made sense. "Because," I said, "every time I try to stop, it feels like lying." The silence after that was unbearable. The world outside seemed to fold in on itself. The sound of a passing bus, the clink of dishes, the rain tapping against the window. All of it faded until there was only her breathing and mine. She finally leaned back, eyes glistening but steady. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Or maybe it's already hard," I said quietly. Her hand brushed across the table, not touching mine, but close enough to feel the heat of it. She hesitated, then whispered, "We should stop seeing each other." I nodded, though my chest tightened at the sound. "Yeah," I said, "we should." But neither of us moved. The air between us held the weight of every word we didn't say. And just before she looked away, her voice, small, shaking, found me one last time. If I were 10 years younger, maybe I wouldn't have to. It had been nearly a month. Long enough to make me believe the silence had settled into something permanent. Then, one morning, a small envelope appeared on the counter at the shop. No name on it. Just my name written in the kind of handwriting you only learn from writing letters, not texts. Inside was a photograph. Old, faded. A man standing beside a car that looked almost identical to hers. He was younger than her, smiling. A mechanic, maybe. On the back, in neat script, were 3 words. "He taught me everything." And nothing else. I didn't know what to do with it, so I did what I always do. I waited. 2 days later, she came in. No explanation, no pretext about the car this time. Just walked in like she used to, though something in her posture had changed, her shoulders drawn, eyes a little dimmer, like she'd been fighting sleep and memories for too long. "You got it," she said quietly. I nodded. "Who was he?" She exhaled. That kind of breath people take when they know the story will hurt them to tell. "Someone who looked at me the way you do," she said. "Someone I shouldn't have let matter." The honesty in her voice made my stomach knot. "I was younger then," she went on. "Married. Lost. He was kind. It didn't last. It couldn't. But I never really forgot how it felt to be seen like that. And when we..." She trailed off, pressing her lips together. It felt like history was repeating itself, only crueler. I wanted to say something, to tell her it wasn't the same, that I wasn't trying to be anyone else, but the words stayed stuck somewhere between guilt and want. Instead, I asked, "Why show me this?" She looked at me for a long moment before answering. "Because you deserve to know that none of this started clean." Her voice trembled on clean. The photo lay between us on the counter, a ghost of someone else's mistakes, or maybe a warning of mine. I touched the edge of it, careful not to smudge. "You think I remind you of him?" "No," she said, shaking her head slowly. "You remind me of the part of myself I thought I buried with him." That line, it hit somewhere deep, where language turns into ache. The shop was quiet except for the slow ticking of the clock above the door. Neither of us looked away. She reached out, hesitated, then brushed her fingers over the photo, tracing his face. "He died 2 years later," she whispered. "Car accident. No one's fault." But I stopped driving for a while after that. Thought maybe I could stop feeling, too. I swallowed hard. "And now?" She looked up at me, eyes red but unflinching. "Now I'm realizing I can't control what comes back to life." The air felt heavier after that, like the room itself understood what she meant. She took the photo, folded it once, and slipped it back into the envelope. Her hand lingered near mine for a moment, almost reaching, almost brave enough. Then she whispered, not to me exactly, maybe to herself, "Sometimes the past doesn't haunt you. It just asks for a second chance in disguise." And she walked out, leaving the faint scent of rain and something impossible to name. It happened on a Sunday. The shop was closed, the streets almost empty, that soft stillness cities get when they forget to rush. I was working on my own car, half distracted, when her shadow crossed the doorway. She didn't knock, didn't call ahead, just stepped in like she'd been walking toward that moment for days. "I shouldn't be here," she said first. I smiled faintly. "You've said that before." She nodded, closing the door behind her. And I meant it every time. But she didn't leave. The silence that followed was too full to be comfortable, too honest to be ignored. She looked around the shop, the shelves, the tools, the mess, like she was memorizing it. Or maybe avoiding my eyes. "I've been trying to forget you," she said. "Trying to turn you into a phase, a mistake, a story I don't tell anyone." Her voice was steady, but the small tremor in her hand, the one resting on the workbench, gave her away. "And?" I asked. She met my gaze then, eyes sharp and wet all at once. "And it's not working." I took a breath, stepped closer, not enough to touch, but close enough to feel the warmth of her presence again. "You think I haven't tried?" Her laugh came low, sad. "You're young. You'll forget me faster." "You keep saying that like it's a mercy," I said. "But it sounds like punishment." Her lips parted, then closed again. The smallest shift, but it carried more than any argument could. I wiped my hands on a rag just to give them something to do. "You don't owe me an explanation," I said softly. "But if this is going to break something, I'd rather it be the truth than the silence." She moved closer, slow, hesitant. The smell of her perfume, faint, familiar, mixed with dust and oil. For a long moment, she just looked at me, eyes searching, as if waiting for a reason not to take the next breath. Then she said it, barely above a whisper. "It's not supposed to feel this right." I nodded. Maybe that's what makes it real. Neither of us moved after that. We just stood there, side by side, the quiet thick between us. Her shoulder brushed mine, a soft, accidental collapse of distance. Her hand found the edge of the workbench, inches from mine. I didn't take it, but I didn't pull away either. The air felt charged, not with desire anymore, but something quieter, surrender, maybe. She turned toward me slowly, eyes glistening. "We don't get to rewrite the past," she said. "No," I whispered, "but we don't have to stay trapped in it either." That made her close her eyes, just for a second, as if that one sentence hurt and healed at the same time. When she opened them again, she leaned her forehead against mine. No kiss, no words, just that, the soft meeting of two people who finally stopped pretending they could resist gravity. Outside, the late afternoon light spilled through the dusty window, golden and quiet. Neither of us said goodbye. We didn't need to. The moment had already decided for us. It's been 6 months since that Sunday. The air feels different now. Calmer, maybe, like the world decided to exhale. I still work at the same shop. Same hum of the lights, same smell of oil and dust. But sometimes, when I'm tightening a bolt or wiping my hands clean, I'll catch myself looking toward the doorway, half expecting her silhouette to appear again. She doesn't, though. Not anymore. The last time I saw her was 2 weeks after that night. She came by early, before the shop opened. Brought coffee. Said she was leaving town for a while. New job, she'd said. New start. We didn't talk about what happened between us. Didn't need to. It was there, quiet, undeniable, resting in the small pauses between words. She hugged me before she left. Not the kind of hug that promises something, but the kind that thanks you for what can't be kept. Her hair smelled like rain again. Her hands were steady this time. And then she was gone. For a while, I told myself I'd forget. That time would sand the edges smooth. But it didn't. It just made them clearer, sharper in places, softer in others. I started noticing small things differently. The way people look at each other when they think no one's watching, the things they don't say when words are too fragile. I used to think love was about saying everything at the right time. Now I think it's about knowing when silence is enough. Sometimes, late at night, I replay that last moment, her forehead resting against mine, the air thick with everything we couldn't name. It doesn't ache the way it used to. It just exists. Like an old song that still stirs something, even when you don't know the lyrics anymore. People ask why I don't date much. I just tell them I'm not in a hurry. Truth is, I learned something from her. That love isn't about chasing what fits easily. It's about recognizing what matters, even when it can't stay. And maybe that's the strange part. How something unfinished can still feel complete. How two people can meet in the wrong season of their lives and still change each other's weather. I saw her once more, by accident. Months later, grocery store parking lot. She looked good, lighter somehow. We didn't talk, just exchanged a nod from across the lot. But in that brief glance, I felt the quiet understanding of two people who'd lived through something neither could explain. When I drove away, I didn't feel loss anymore, just gratitude. Because some connections don't fade, they evolve into the spaces between memories. And some goodbyes aren't endings, they're acknowledgments that something real happened. So if you're listening, if you've ever felt that kind of impossible pull towards someone you shouldn't, don't rush to label it, or fix it, or hide from it. Just let it teach you what it came to teach. That's what she did for me. That's what love does, when it's real enough to hurt a little. If this story reached you, stay a while in the comments. Tell me what you think love means when it doesn't last.